Welcome into the August 19th episode of the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti, your host here on the podcast. A busy day in the NHL, signings, trades, big-time league announcements. We'll get you up to date on all of that, including where Nazem Kadri will be playing next season as he's officially now off the market. A Dom Lucian of The Athletic put out an article ranking each team's front office. We'll tell you where the Leafs land on that list. All that and more on today's edition of Locked On Leafs.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Leafs podcast, one-stop shop for all things Leafs. I'm your host, Mike DiStefano from TSN 1050 Toronto Radio, also known as Al's brother on TSN's Overdrive and TSN 1050's Leafs Lunch. Joining me, it's my co-host, Dave Morassutti from Sportsnet, also a writer for the NHLPA. Locked On Leafs is a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast, so be sure to subscribe for free wherever you get your podcast from. You can also now catch us up on video format up on YouTube. Just search up Locked On Leafs on YouTube. Hit subscribe. Hit the little bell notification tab so that you know exactly when you get some new podcasts and videos coming to you daily. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. Busy day in the NHL. Not quite, that day, what was it, June 26th of 2016. Not quite that busy, but a busy day nonetheless in the NHL. We had Nazem Kadri sign his contract, which caused another decently sized trade in the NHL. And we got some update actually on Carey Price as well today. So a lot of big news, and the draft was awarded to a city, which I'm very excited about that. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. But let's get to the biggest news of the day. That's obviously Nazem Kadri, the big fish out on the market. It's been out there for a long time, Dave. Long time. It's now, August 19th, and it's been well over a month that he has been eligible to sign a contract, was unable to find the 7 times $9 million he was reportedly looking for, but today finally decides to ink a deal with the team. 7 years, $7 million AAV with the Calgary Flames. Yes, the Flames loading back up. What are your thoughts on this deal, and what do you think this means for Calgary?
Yeah, we kind of heard Calgary a little bit, like when we were talking about like teams that could be interested. Like Calgary had a desperate need for a center, so like the fit makes so much sense. I think Calgary and Kadri are almost like a match made in heaven in terms of play style. You get a little bit, you lose some of that, peskiness that Matthew Tkachuk brought.
Right.
Nazem Kadri will bring some of that back. Daryl Sutter will love Nazem Kadri for that a little bit, if he liked that with Tkachuk. Centerman, now they got a legitimate number 2 guy behind Elias Lindholm, so that's a big one for them. My concern is the 7 years, because I think people tend to forget that Nazem Kadri is 31.
Yeah.
He's no spring chicken. Yes, he did have a career high year, but he also did it in a contract year, and he also did it playing for a Colorado Avalanche team that is not short on offensive firepower. Calgary Flames are not the Colorado Avalanche. If you watch the Calgary Flames, I watched them quite a bit this past season. Goal scoring did not come easily for this team, and it was a big problem for them at times in the playoffs. So, like, Nazem Kadri doesn't fix their goal scoring problems. What he does is he allows them to kind of keep some of that Daryl Sutter play style that they are going to
jam, that pain in the ass. I mean, people
Exactly.
in Toronto know exactly what Nazem Kadri is going to bring to that lineup, what he's going to bring there. And, you know, he's just going to be the team's second line center. It's not like he has to come in and be the savior of this franchise because they already have Elias Lindholm, who they're very high on and is a top line center, one of the more underrated players in the NHL. So he slotted in perfectly in a 1-2 tandem, much like he was in Colorado. I'm with you, though. Like, when you look at that deal, you say to yourself, okay, I like it in terms of, you know, it's a good fit. I like the fact that it's only $7 million as opposed to $9 million, which were the kind of initial thoughts that maybe Kadri would get. But the 7 years you're not going to love. But it's free agency, and sometimes you got to pay up either in AAV or with years. And clearly they said, okay, we'll extend it to the 7 years, but we're only going to go as high as 7 by 7, and that's ultimately what they're doing here. Now, what I want to talk about, like, Nazem Kadri had a career year this season. We all know that 87-point year. He was a beast. 40 some odd or 30 some odd goals. How many goals did he end up scoring? I think it was 30 something goals this season with the Colorado Avalanche. Now, what a lot of people assume is he was playing with their best guys because Nathan MacKinnon missed some time, and they're like, okay, he must have been playing with their top stars. His most common line mates who he played with this year was Andrei Burakovsky and Valeri Nichushkin. Those aren't like absolute stud players. They're good second line players, but I would say that, you know, you could arguably say that Tyler Toffoli is just as good a goal scorer as either one of those guys, and that's who he's going to be on a line with. Maybe it's Andrew Mangiapane that he could potentially be on a line with there. So there are some guys who, you know, I think are comparable to the players that he was with when he was in Colorado that will allow him to still get his cookies, get his points, and not completely tail off in the way that some people think. Like, I've heard some guys say, like, oh yeah, of course he was racking up points playing in Colorado because he was playing on a line with Landeskog and Rantanen and you know, playing with Nathan MacKinnon sometimes. Well, not really, actually, because you'll take a look again. Burakovsky and Nichushkin, his most common line mates, 550 minutes played with Burakovsky, 360 played with Nichushkin. You're talking about Gabriel Landeskog, only 160 minutes at 5-on-5. Mikko Rantanen, 145 minutes at 5-on-5. So it really wasn't all, you know, he didn't play with them all that much. Were they really good minutes? Yes. You look at their advanced analytics. He did play better when he was with them, obviously, but he still had a positive shot share, and he still went out there and had a positive expected goal rating when he was out there with Nichushkin and Burakovsky. So I still believe that he's going to be a capable player for the next 3-4 years, but years 5 through 7, that's where it might get dicey. But if you look at the way that the Calgary Flames are built anyways, this is a team that's only going to compete for the next 3 to 4 years because a lot of their guys are in that window, late 20s, early 30s, and that team's going to age out quick. So if you are the Calgary Flames, you're not thinking about years, 4, 5, 6, 7 of that deal. You're looking at the 3 years where you think Nazem Kadri can help you get to the promised land, help you go on long playoff runs, and I believe that he does that and checks off that box. I like this deal from the Calgary Flames perspective.
Yeah, I mean, you go from almost having a disaster offseason where, Johnny Gaudreau leaves, Matthew Tkachuk wants out, and the return is Jonathan Huberdeau, Mackenzie Weegar, and Nazem Kadri. That's pretty good for Brad Treliving, considering how tough it is to really pull off these sort of deals that he did. Like, you're not seeing teams doing a lot of this because the cap is so tight. Now, obviously, it came at a bit of a cost with the Sean Monahan deal, which I know we're going to get into. But the other thing about Kadri, too, is that he played last year. He averaged the most ice time of his career, right? It's funny because as he's getting older, he was playing more, and he was more effective. So yeah, I think this is definitely a deal that if you're a Calgary Flames fan, you're happy about this because you're not dreading as much about what happened with Gaudreau and Tkachuk leaving. Does it suck? Absolutely. But you can swallow, you can, it's easier to digest that news when you have this as kind of the runner-up to what happened.
Agreed. Completely agree with you on that one. So you mentioned it. In order to accommodate the contract here for Nazem Kadri, they did have to make a pretty sizable move by trading away Sean Monahan, who for the last few years, his play has declined, and this year was a healthy scratch for a little bit. Didn't end up playing in the playoffs either. It didn't really surprise me all that much when I saw the what it took to unload that contract. Us here in Toronto should know specifically what it takes to unload 1 year of a $6+ million contract and not retain any money, a la Patrick Marleau. Was the exact same type of return that Montreal got for taking on Sean Monahan, a conditional 2025 first round pick. And Sean Monahan, like when you look at him, I feel like his name holds more weight than he does specifically. And it's because the first few seasons in the NHL, it was terrific. Like, this is a guy who not too long ago was putting up 60 points. He had an 82-point season back in 2018, 2019 in 78 games, 34 goals in that year. But since then, only 48 games the year that the pandemic hit, and it was shortened to 70. So 48 games in 70. And then the 56-game season, he had 28 points in 50 games. And then last year, just 65 games played, only 23 points. And he didn't get to play a single game in the playoffs. So not a good season for Sean Monahan. A guy who was at one point like this team's they thought was going to be the number one center for years to come, and the game just fell off for him. So he'll get a new fresh start in Montreal, and they had to pay, a pretty high price, a conditional 2025 first round pick, and to get that full 6.3 and change contract completely off the books in order to bring in Nazem Kadri. But that's the price, man. And did you see the conditions on this thing? It's a novel. It's a novel. It's like looking.
It's a checklist. You have to go through a checklist. Did they get this?
It's like
no.
It's set up like the NHL rules. It's like number 1, and then like section 2, 3, 4. If this happens, then this will happen. But if this doesn't happen, then this happens. And then if this, it was so convoluted and confusing.
Yeah.
But basically, at some point, Montreal will get a first round pick from the Calgary Flames, potentially from the Florida Panthers. They will get a future first round pick from for taking on Sean Monahan. It won't be next year. It could be the year after that, or the year after that, or the year after that. It's conditional. It's going to be a couple of years down the road, but they'll eventually get that first round pick. Do you have any belief that Sean Monahan could turn it around and be a factor in Montreal? I mean, now you look down the middle. They've got, they went out and they traded for Kirby Dach. Right, they've got themselves Dvorak, and now they have Sean Monahan and Nick, obviously, Nick Suzuki up top, right, and then Dvorak, Dach, and Monahan. I mean, any belief that he can turn it around here, or is this just a 1-year flyer? There's only 1 year left on that deal,
so here's the thing with Monahan. I'll give him a little bit of slack because he has been dealing with nagging injuries, like hip injuries. He had his second hip surgery, I believe, that ended his year early. But that's the issue, right? You already got a guy who's had multiple injuries to the hips and all those things. That's really tough for him to come back on. He said he's skating about 4 times a week right now on the ice, which that's good for him, but it's never the beginning of the season as can he go a full season. So I think for Monahan, this is just you're trying to figure out, can you still be somewhat of an effective player at the NHL level? And for Montreal, they got nothing to lose. Like, I know that they're like everything that's going on with Carey Price right now, and whether he's going to play again, that's going to be a big thing. But for them, team's going to give you a first round pick. You got the cap space to make it work. You go ahead and you do it. And Sean Monahan, I'm not banking on him to do a lot in Montreal. I think the important thing for him is just to get back healthy and let the rest kind of take care of itself.
It's so funny how this team went from being, oh, they need size. They're so small. They need size on that team to all of a sudden now you look, it's like they got Josh Anderson. They got Kirby Doc. Now they've got Sean Monahan. Like all of a sudden it's like, okay, there's a little bit of size on that team. And now they need skill instead. It's
goaltending.
And goaltending. And we will get to that actually on the other side. But before we kind of get into the Carey Price news and also get into where the NHL Draft and Awards going to be held tomorrow or next season, just really quickly, we can kind of put a bow here on the Calgary Flames in this conversation. In goes Kadri, Huberdeau, and Weegar. Out goes Gaudreau, Tkachuk, and Monahan. Is Calgary better, worse, or the same in your eyes?
I think they get maybe slightly. I think they do get better, but not a whole lot better because I think the Monahan subtraction actually helps them because like he just has not been an effective player, and his cap hit was just really an eyesore. I mean, they have the Milan Lucic contract as well. That's also the biggest eyesore right now as well. But I think that is big. But I think Tkachuk and Gaudreau just like those guys put up 100-point seasons. He lost 2 of them.
And Huberdeau put up 100 points, put up 115 points. Kadri was close to it. I don't think he'll come close to it again, but
I don't think so. I think the Weegar edition is an underrated one.
It's big.
I think that's an underrated one. I think that's what pushes them into like away from like they're just okay to like okay this does make them better because they get kind of the quantity plus quality with it. Like it's not amazing quality when you consider what you lost, but it's still decent enough that you're not kind of losing all hope in what in Calgary. A lot of people are now saying, look, they might be another team, another crack to go top in the West, right?
Yeah. And you have to think, Mangiapane coming off a career year, scored I think 35 goals this season. He could take a step if he ends up on that top line with Huberdeau and Elias Lindholm with Tkachuk moving on. Now there's an open spot on the top line for a guy like Mangiapane to go out there and accept passes from Huberdeau and Lindholm. He could take a step next year. Potentially Dylan Dubé could take a step as well. Could you get a better season out of Blake Coleman this year? So there's some guys too that you can hope that can have a little bit of a better year. Rasmus Anderson is a young defenseman. Oliver Shillington, is he going to take another step this season? So there's some younger guys you also think can maybe elevate their game to another level on top of bringing in Huberdeau and Nazem Kadri. So I think this team is better, slightly better. Like they're closer. It's very close to being the same, but I think they are slightly better. And I hate to say it, they could potentially be the best team in Canada on paper. They could be. It's tough to say from a Leafs broadcaster from this market, but goaltending is very key. And they've got a top 5 goalie in the NHL who can shut it down on a nightly basis. They've got a quality top 4 on the top 6, actually. Their entire blue line is quite good, in my opinion. And now with the addition of Nazem Kadri, you've got yourself a bona fide top 6 and a pretty decent bottom 6 as well. Extremely well balanced. So I like what the Flames have done this offseason. They were dealt a terrible hand. Brad Treliving, a terrible hand. And somehow he was able to, to use a poker term, I suppose, he came and he hit on the river with this late signing in Nazem Kadri. And now all of a sudden, that terrible open that he had turned into a pretty solid hand and a pretty good team, I think. But got to play the games. Still got to play the games before we get ahead of ourselves. All right, before we get into any more news here today, I do want to tell you guys that today's show is brought to you by betonline.net, and BetOnline is, oh, I lost the ad read there. It actually made me refresh, and it made me lose it. I hate when that happens, Dave. Hate when that happens. Okay. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting, scores, podcasts. They got you covered. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. We're our hosts here on the Locked On Leafs podcast. And if you haven't already, if it's your first time listening to us, hopefully you're enjoying this podcast. And if you have, go ahead, subscribe to us, because we'll be uploading content 3 times a week for the next month or so. And then right when training camp pops up, 5 times a week we'll be putting out content and videos for you. Also, over the next couple of weeks, we'll have some very interesting episodes coming out, including a one-on-one interview with a former Maple Leaf. I'm not going to tell you who that is just yet. Still trying to make sure that it is confirmed, but a former Maple Leaf will be joining the show, one of 2 guys, and potentially both. I don't know. We'll see. But we will have a former Maple Leaf on. So make sure you're subscribed and hit the notification bell so you know when those episodes do drop. So outside of the big trade the big signing of Nazem Kadri, the subsequent trading of Monahan's contract to Montreal, that allowed the Canadiens to have a press conference to discuss the trade of Sean Monahan. And there, Ken Hughes was asked about Carey Price, and basically said it sounds as though Carey Price could miss the season again. He ended up getting another kind of a shot in his leg, I guess, some sort of cortisone shot in his knee, which had been ailing him all season last year. And I guess it hasn't responded the way that they had originally hoped it would. And his season could be in jeopardy, Dave. And if that's the case, I mean, I know the Habs did a lot of work this offseason, and this is going to be a completely kind of new-look team in a way, but without Carey Price, this team really isn't anywhere near as scary as I guess they were the year that they went to the Cup, and that was only, like, literally a calendar year ago.
If I'm the Vegas Golden Knights right now, I'm calling to see what Jake Allen's price is to get him. Because he's not great, but he's better than what Vegas currently has. And if I'm Jake Allen, why am I going to waste kind of my years over in Montreal, where they're not going to be a good team next year? He's going to be a UFA.
They're paying you money to do it.
Well, I mean, yeah, there's that. I mean, that's the main reason you're doing it. But what I'm saying is that this team, without Carey Price, this team is not gonna really go anywhere.
It's
because
hot garbage. Let's be honest, it's hot garbage.
We've seen firsthand what a healthy Carey Price can do for this Montreal Canadiens team, because they go from being in the Stanley Cup Finals to being the first ever team in NHL history to finish 32nd.
Yeah. What do you think? I mean, the way that it's kind of ended here for Carey Price, like, essentially kind of ends on a Stanley Cup run, if we're being honest with ourselves, in a way, right? Kind of. Because last year did play a couple games, but, you know, it wasn't the same. It was right at the end of the year. He only got a couple in, and you didn't see much. And then if he doesn't play again next season, I mean, who says he doesn't end up hanging it up at 36, 37 years old? You know, do you think that these last couple of years has going to have any impact on what people think of Carey Price? Like, I saw somebody post this out on Twitter today, may have been friend of the show, actually, the Golden Muzzy, as we all know him on Twitter. I believe he said, is Carey Price like a first-ballot Hall of Famer? And I'm curious to get your thoughts on that. I mean, to me, yeah, he is. But Do you think there's some out there that look at Price and say, he really only had like 2 good seasons and it didn't end gracefully? Maybe he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer. Like, I thought it was no question, but is there people out there you think that maybe believe that's not the case?
Oh, definitely be people who don't think so, but um, I definitely think he's a Hall of Famer. And first ballot, I think probably considering what he has accomplished throughout his years, winning the Vezina, winning the Hart, winning the Jennings, winning the gold medal, winning. He has won quite a bit throughout his career, right? And he's put up great numbers, albeit I know that injuries have been a factor, especially the last few years. But what when you look at top goaltenders in the league, there was a good stretch where it was Carey Price and then a lot of other goaltenders in the NHL. So that to me screams Hall of Famer right there, right? He was among the best, or he was the best
The
at
best for many years. It was like, who's the
yeah,
number one goalie? You could ask anybody who watches hockey and follows the sport, and the answer coming out of their mouth is Carey Price.
yeah.
It wasn't really that much of a debate.
So I do think that the injuries suck. It's brutal, but he accomplished so much in his career already to this point that the only thing really missing was that Stanley Cup. That was,
Yeah.
and he put the Habs
Came
in a
so
great
close.
position. Like
Came so close to getting it. Well, as close as you can get
as
to.
close, I actually think the closest they were was the year that he was knocked out of the playoffs against the Rangers, because he was on another
Yeah.
level there as
Well,
well.
he was injured, right? And then Dustin Tokarski had to come in. Probably, yeah, they would have had a really good shot to win that one. That was PK Subban was there. I think Mike Camilleri was on that squad potentially. Or am I thinking of the one against Philly back in 09?
Yeah, the thing about Philly, I'm trying to think what year that was that he went. They lost to the Rangers. I think it
I
was
think
back to back years that they were in the Eastern Conference Finals.
it was 2014 or 2015
Yeah,
when that happened, I want to say. Or 2013 maybe. It was one of the years that the Kings won
2014.
2014, yeah. It was one of the years that the Kings ended up winning the cup. But yeah, it's unfortunate news for Carey Price. I mean, I know he's a Montreal Canadian and a Hab and boo. I hate that franchise and organization, but Carey Price is someone you have to respect as a hockey fan. Someone who brought me joy winning a gold medal for Team Canada, for my country, not just at the Olympics, but also World Juniors. So, Carey Price is a guy who I've always had a lot of immense respect for. And it's unfortunate if this is kind of the end of the Carey Price that we've come to know and love in the game. If he misses all of next season, who knows what the future holds after essentially 2 full years out of the game. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Really quickly, the other thing that was announced today, the NHL Draft and Award Show will be in Nashville next season, my guy. And you pointed out to me, it's actually their 25th anniversary of them entering the league. So they've been awarded with this as a little, celebration, I suppose, of 25 years in the NHL. But man, imagine the party that's going to be next year in Smashville. Not only are they going to be having the award ceremony where they'll be able to just get gooned afterwards, because it's probably not going to be in the middle of the Stanley Cup Finals, which was stupid that they did that this year, but I digress. But also the NHL Draft. So hockey is going to take over the city streets of Nashville. It's taken over Tootsie's. Dude, we got to figure out a way to get there, my guy. We got to get there.
Nashville, like I have a list of places I want to go, especially south of the border, and Nashville is near the top of the list.
Same. Hey, listeners, if you want to start a GoFundMe to send Mike and Dave to Nashville for the draft next year, you go right ahead. You go right ahead.
Or you do this. You all subscribe, you tell all your friends, and we earn enough doing this podcast that will get you great exclusive content at the draft.
This is true. That is a better way as opposed to begging for free money. That's a much better way to do it, much more professional way to do it. And that's why I love you, Dave. That's why I love you. And I'm not going to tell people to watch the ads, but watching the ads helps. I could tell you that much. Just kidding. Well, no, it does. It does help, but you do what you want. But it's gonna be a loaded draft class too. Like, it's not just the fact that it's gonna be a party, but like, that's a good draft. Obviously, we've been watching Connor Bedard at the World Junior Championships the last couple of weeks, and that guy's going to be going number 1 overall. Matvei Michkov is a very talented Russian who's expected to go in the top 3, and Adam Fantilli, who also really another talented centerman who could go top 3 and might be able to challenge Michkov for like that number 2 spot. But I've talked to some guys who've told me, look, if any of these three players were in this past year's draft, they're no doubt number 1 picks in the draft, no doubters. So the fact that you could get a guy like Adam Fantilli going 3rd overall, let's say, he would have been the clear-cut number 1 pick in this year's draft, which just goes to show kind of how much deeper of a draft this could potentially be. And the Leafs own their first-round pick as of now. We'll see if they trade it between now and the draft.
What contract are they going to be trying to get rid of at the next draft?
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what ends up happening. Well, even at the deadline, if they try and bring in, a player at the deadline and give up a draft pick to get it done, like, I'm not opposed to it, but let's make sure it's worth it. If you get out of the first round to the playoffs, maybe it's worth it. But if you don't, then of course you're
going to ruin our trip to Nashville. What the heck?
Exactly. You ruin our trip to Nashville. Speaking of the draft and trading away draft picks and whatnot. On the other side, Dave, we're going to take a look at Don Luszczyszyn's article in The Athletic, where essentially he compiled a list. A survey was sent out to Athletic subscribers, and he ranked what everybody's answers were and did an NHL front office confidence ranking. So we'll tell you where the Leafs land amongst the rest of the league, and we'll do that on the other side. You're listening to Locked On Leafs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Welcome back into Locked On Leafs, daily Maple Leafs podcast here. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. We are your hosts here on the show, and just as we noted before we went to break there, Don Luszczyszyn, great writer for The Athletic, wrote a piece. He sent out a survey to all fans, not just Maple Leaf fans, but to all of the Athletic subscribers. And you could do 2 things. So you could either do all 32 teams and just like as a general observer and do the survey for all 32 teams, but then also pick your favorite team. So there's 2 columns. It's, a fan base, and then what's the other one?
Public,
right. So it's the public, and then your own fan base. So it kind of shows what the public feels and how the fan base feels. And it makes sense that the fan base feels worse about Maple Leafs management than the public does. That did not surprise me. But why don't we pull up this what we got here, basically the Toronto Maple Leafs section of it. So they ranked 18th, which is actually the exact same ranking that they had a year ago. Same result, first round exit. Makes sense to have a same result, 18th for a second consecutive year. Overall, they were given a B-, and that's combined with the public and the fan base. The public had them as the 15th best team, and the fan base, Toronto, had them as the 20th best front office, and together that ended up ranking them at 18th overall. So let's start with the categories. For those listening, I'll name them off to you. If you're watching, you can see it right here on the screen. But for those listening, the categories that were asked, and they were asked to grade everybody from, from, I think is probably from an F to an A+, essentially, with everything in between, minuses, pluses, all that. And the categories were roster building, cap management, draft and develop, trading, free agency, and vision. So we'll start with roster building. The public gave them a B for roster building, which was ranked 12th out of the entire NHL. The fan base, however, B-, which ranked 19th in the NHL. I mean, I think a B is very good. If anything, I probably would give them a B plus for roster building. I think Kyle Dubas has built a pretty good roster overall, and there's not a whole lot of teams out there that have better rosters on paper than what the Toronto Maple Leafs have. Goaltending aside, I suppose that's the big glaring weakness that this team does have. But I still think that overall, it's a pretty solid roster. And last year with 900 goaltending, they were able to outscore their problems because of their solid roster. So I think I probably would have given it a B, maybe a B plus, like on the edge of a B plus. What about you, Dave?
Yeah, I'm in the same feeling there because, like, what if you look at the roster itself? What could Kyle Dubas have done differently? Really, the only yeah, goaltending. You wish you could have gotten a better goaltender. They did try it, just the deal was not there for them. Is it the blue line? Is that the reason why that the fan base, like, it can't be up front? I will say that forwards top down. I thought they had 4 solid lines that a lot of teams wish they would have had. Defense, maybe you want some better options, especially on the right side. But other than that, I think like Kyle Dubas has always found ways to address holes in creative ways. So yeah, I think a B plus is fair. It's not a perfect roster, but it's not a dreadful roster either.
No. So, yeah, I think the public probably a little, they take a step back and they look at it more so at what it was than the jaded fan base, which gave them a B minus, which apparently it's the ranked 19th best roster in the NHL. Obviously, they're not the 19th best roster in the NHL. They're a playoff team and arguably, could potentially win one of the tougher divisions in the NHL, which means they're probably up in the top 10, which would be a B plus level roster. All right. Cap management is the next category, and the public, not a fan of the way that Kyle Dubas manages his cap. They gave him a C grade on average, which was ranked 22nd out of 32 teams. And the fan base, surprisingly, very surprisingly, a little more bullish on the cap management situation from Kyle Dubas, ranked it a B minus, which was 19th in the NHL. Dave, where do you sit with Kyle Dubas and Maple Leafs brass and their cap management?
Yeah, I'm in about the B minus there because they're very top heavy with their forwards, so that doesn't allow them to spend in other areas. But they're not sacrificing too much when it comes to the cap in certain areas because they're able to address, like, they're spending a decent amount on goaltending. They're spending a decent amount on their blue line. Up front, you wish you could have, found ways to, help with the scoring a little bit at times, but you don't really have the money to go out and get like a score. But yeah, no, I think people look at the amount of top end dollars that are being spent on this roster and are probably saying, well, they're not, like, that's just a lot of money. But if you're going to compare the Leafs to a lot of other NHL teams I'm seeing with the way that their caps are being, the salary cap is being handled, I think the Leafs do quite a better job because they're not sweating out trying to figure out how they're going to save like $8 million on the salary cap, like a team like Vegas, Tampa, like those teams. When it comes to cap management, it's like they're sweating it until the start of the season.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's true. I mean, they at least they know their limit and they play within it in a way. And you can tell based on the fact that they're just not signing free agents, like their own free agents. They're like, nah, we know we're not going to be able to sign you. We're not going to be able to do much. We'll let you go. I mean, they are a couple million over the cap currently as it stands, and I'm sure obviously by the time they drop the puck, they'll be under the cap. That's part of Brandon Pridham's job, is to make sure that happens so that they can, play games. So I would imagine they'll be under the cap by then. But I probably would give it a C plus though. Like, I'm in the middle of the public and the fan base because I think they have allotted too much. Like, they are very top heavy, and it doesn't allow them to have enough, middle six talent. Like, and even the middle six talent that they do have, Engvall, who I'm a big fan of Engvall. We all know I love Engvall, but like Engvall and like having Alex Kerfoot as your second line winger, those are the guys who you're paying a little bit more money to, and they're just not that good. Like Kerfoot making $3.5 million doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You know what I mean? And obviously the Tavares contract, we all know how that's kind of blown up in their face as well. So I'd probably give it a C plus. C plus I would give it. All right, next category is draft and develop. The public giving them a B minus, which was good for 15th in the NHL. The fan base not high on the drafting and development process of the Toronto Maple Leafs, giving them a C plus, which is 20th in the NHL. I'm siding more so with the fan base, and I probably would even go a little lower. I give them a C. Who the heck have they drafted and developed that's not a first round pick?
No, that's my thought process as well. I've said that a lot of the reasons why that they haven't been able to really count it on their depth is because it's not coming from players they've drafted and developed. Problem is, a lot of the guys they drafted and developed are not even in North America. We're waiting for a lot of these guys that are playing in Finland, playing in Russia, and the guys they do get here in North America, quite a few of them are, they're being picked in the lower round, and higher round, like later in the draft. Like I just feel, and that's why some people were actually calling for the Leafs to pick more guys here, because you got so many prospects that you have to wait for, right? Niemela, Hirvonen. I mean, now if it wasn't for his health, Amirov would have been in the same boat. A lot of these guys are just, when you're a contending team, you have to find ways to get these guys in a little bit sooner, because you need to supplement your depth with some younger, I'm not going to call them cheap talent because they're actually supposed to be highly skilled talent, but you need more of that. Other teams have been able to get it.
They're on entry-level contracts, and you need to be able to exploit that when you can.
Yeah, like look at Colorado. I understand that a lot of it is also high picks, but they have hit on a lot of their second and third round picks.
Dude, the staple to me is the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yes.
Right? Like Palat, 7th round pick, Braden Point, 3rd round pick, Ross Colton, mid-round pick, right? Like they've got so many guys out there. Chernak was traded for actually, but they've got so many guys who were mid to late round selections who have turned out to be, decent NHLers for them. Like Tyler Johnson was a late pick. Killorn was a later pick. Like they just find a whole bunch of guys late in the drafts, and they develop them really, really well, and they end up turning into players for them. Are they the top talents of the Austin Matthews? Like, I mean, one guy they were able to turn into a top line talent, Braden Point, but they don't have to be. They could be Andre Palat. I would love for the Maple Leafs to find an Andre Palat in the 7th round. Like Andre Palat is a better player than Pierre Engvall, who was drafted in the 7th round. You know what I mean? Like that's the difference. We could draft Pierre Engvall's bottom 6 guys and develop those bottom 6 players, but they're not developing the high end stuff. Now, I'll say this because we've probably gone too long by noting, yes, I understand they have drafted Nick Robertson. They have drafted Matthew Nyes, who we assume will have decent careers and will develop into good NHLers. But at this moment in time, they've yet to actually do that. And until they develop into those real bona fide top 6 players, they haven't developed yet. There's been plenty of guys who have been drafted, look good in junior, look good in college. They get to the NHL. They don't really become what they're expected to be. Happens all the time. So until they actually develop some guys, I'm going to hold judgment there. So I'm actually giving them a C. I don't really think they've been able to do that at all the last, what's Dubas been here now? 5-6 years?
I give it since 2017, 2018.
Yeah. So, all right. Trading. So both the public and the fan base giving them a C plus for trading. I'd be a little higher on this.
Yeah, I find this harsh.
Yeah, I would be higher on this. I mean, I bet you a lot of that is the Kadri trade, to be honest. Like, the Kadri deal was pretty brutal. And then also, maybe some recency bias on the Matt Murray deal, not being able to have more salary retained. Maybe those two alone have knocked this from the B's to a C plus, which I guess I could listen to that argument. But overall, I think that he's actually been a pretty savvy trader, and I have not had many issues with a lot of the trades that he's done. He's been able to do some decent things and bring in some, lower level talents. Have been able to fill out the roster a little bit through some trades. Last year traded away Nick Ritchie for Lyubushkin. That worked out extremely well. Bringing in Giordano and Blackwell last year, I thought was a solid trade that he was able to make. So overall, I think I'm going to give him a B minus, not a C plus. I'll give him a B minus for trading.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat too. I was one of the few. I know people were split on the Peter Mrazek trade. I thought that was a good trade considering what they need to get done. I wasn't a fan of them getting rid of Jared McCann, but they felt like they were in a bit of a bind there with the expansion draft. But Kyle Dubas has always seen the needs that the team has, and he's actually done a great job of going out and finding those players. Like, people might bring up the Nick Foligno trade. Nick Foligno would have worked perfectly with the Leafs had he not gotten injured.
Yes.
Right?
Agreed.
Like those sort of trades generally would work out if, and it's not always going to line up that way, but he's always found ways to find, they got these needs that they got to get filled, and he's found ways to do it and not overpay a whole lot to get it done either. I think the worst trade, of all the ones Kyle Dubas has made, probably Mason Marchman.
Wow.
But that's
hindsight. It's definitely Nazem Kadri, but I get what you're saying there. I've made that comparison as well. Think about some of these other deals that go under the radar that people don't talk about that I think he deserves some credit for. I mean, Alex Galchenyuk turned out to be a decent player for this team a couple of years ago. Now, the playoffs didn't end as well as you would hope for him, but he was at least, playing well, and he was in the team's top six and contributing. They give up nothing to bring him in. David Warsofsky and Yegor Korshkov, who's not even in the NHL. They got rid of Andreas Janssen's $3.4 million contract for Joey Anderson, just to bring Anderson in. They were able to get rid of that contract without having to give up anything. And this was during the pandemic, so when there was already a flat cap. And here's the King Daddy topper, what I think is the best trade of Kyle Dubas's career. The guy got a first-round pick, Philip Hollander, technically got Evan Rodriguez as well, for Jesperi Kapanen. Like, he got Philip Hollander and a first-round pick for Jesperi Kapanen, who was making $3.2 million during the COVID when they knew there was going to be a cap crunch, and was still able to somehow get a first-round pick for Jesperi Kapanen. Like, that is some pretty nifty work there by Kyle Dubas that does not get enough credit. Bringing in Jack Campbell and Kyle Clifford for Trevor Moore and a couple of draft picks, that was a good trade.
That was one of my favorite ones.
That was a terrific trade that he was able to do. Just looking down at the rest of the deals that he's been able to do, undoing the Nikita Zaitsev trade, getting that contract off the books.
Hate that one.
Yeah, they do. They certainly do. I mean, at the time, Jake Muzzin, that was a decent trade, right? Now maybe look at it, Jersey looks like a pretty good player. They gave up a first-round pick in that deal as well. But Jake Muzzin, when he is healthy, has been a very good player for this team. So he's made some nice deals for sure for the Maple Leafs. So maybe I'll give him a B. I'm gonna give him a B actually. All right, we got two more categories here. Let's try and run through them a little quickly. We're almost at 50 minutes here. Free agency. So the public giving him a B minus, which is good for 13th in the NHL. The fan base giving him a B, which is 12th in the NHL. I thought the fan base would be a little harsher on that one, to be honest with you. I think a B is actually correct. You look at some of the moves that he's done. Michael Bunting worked out really well. David Kampf worked out really well. TJ Brody has worked out really well. They've been able to get some guys over the last few seasons through free agency that have worked out. But there also have been some misses, right? Nick Ritchie, that was a big miss. Going out and getting Peter Mrazek, that was a big miss. John Tavares, that was a free agent signing. Wasn't the greatest, didn't turn out to be the greatest signing. And now we're all looking at that and saying, oof, if there's a way to get out of that contract, we should probably do it. So I probably would give him a B- for free agency.
I'm on the B because I remember the year they got TJ Brody, everybody wanted him to go get Alex Pietrangelo. And he's like, you know what? He's a good player, great defenseman. He's just going to make way too much money given our cap constraints. So let's get TJ.
You're telling me that you wouldn't rather. What's he making right now?
He's making what, 9?
No.
8 or 9?
I think 8.4. Maybe 8 million.
I
don't know, man. An extra $3 million. Maybe I'd be willing
8.8.
8.8.
That's quite high. Like, considering the option they ended up getting was TJ Brody, I don't hate that.
It's worked out. Definitely has worked out.
Like, I wanted Alex Pietrangelo because I wanted them to get that bona fide right shot defenseman. 8.8 was just high. If they didn't have all these other contracts, like if you swapped out Pietrangelo for Tavares, you're probably liking that a little bit more.
Yeah.
So, but I do think he in my opinion he's around a B for me, just because he has made some decent signings. The handful that you can count on, basically count on my one hand that hasn't worked out, he has found ways to not let it cripple the team, and I think that's crucial.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I'm just trying to bring up his list of free agent signings to see if I could see who he has signed as free agents, though. Let's see UFAs. These are also like extensions, though, so not technically re-signings.
Yeah,
that I'm looking at here, but he signed. No, this is like Toronto Maple Leafs. Okay, Dubas, but as when he was in AGM, though, a lot of these signings that he was making, but I think he's done an okay job. But yeah, he's kind of been hamstrung too the last couple of years. Also, letting guys walk, not being able to get anything for him. So the approach to free agency,
like asset management more so than free agency. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah. The final category here is vision. So are they sticking to the vision? And is the vision a good one? The public giving them a B-, which is good for 11th in the NHL. The fan base also giving them a B-, which was 19th, according to the fan base rankings here. The team's vision. Do you like the team's vision, Dave? Are they sticking to it? Is it working? What are your thoughts?
I'm in a B- because I think that at times he's been totally sticking to, like, he's a guy that's trying to stick to what he believes will work. I give him a lot of credit for that, but there are times where I feel like you need to tinker. But I give him a lot of credit for sticking with it. Do I agree with the vision? I do, but I'm not totally sold on it just because it hasn't. The results haven't been there. So how can you be totally on board with the vision when the results haven't been there? But I also think his vision of what we've seen from Kyle Dubas over these last few years has been better than a lot of other GMs that the Leafs have had, and like since really Pat Quinn, if I'm going to be honest here, because those that's what I equate to. His vision has been a lot better. Obviously, he inherited a team that had some good players, but he's also had to build a lot of other things too. And I think he's done a pretty good job. I think he has had some misses, but I think his vision has been. So yeah, I'm in like that B- range. I don't think the fan base is too far off on that.
I think they are quite far off. I think you're quite far off. I'm much higher than you on this.
Oh,
B+. I like it as a B+ and like B+ inching to an A-. The vision, I think, is exactly where it needs to be. I like the process. I haven't liked the results, but the process is sound. Like what he has done and the vision that he has for this team, I think is sound, right? Like, and even every time there's a hole in this roster, he typically does a really good job of plugging that hole, right? Like last year, it was they need another defenseman. Okay, let's go and get Mark Giordano, right? Oh, we also need a fourth line center. Okay, let's also bring in a Colin Blackwell to help that out as well. The year before, what do we need? We need like a versatile player who can play center, can play the wing, but also has, some jam to him. All right, let's go get Nick Foligno. The year before, what do we need? We need a backup goaltender with Freddie Anderson. Okay, let's go get Jack Campbell. The year before that, what do you need? We need someone, a defenseman who's got some jam, some ruggedness to him. All right, Jake Muzzin, let's go and get him and pay for him. Like he has a vision. He knows what he wants, and he goes and he does it. He gets it. The problem is the results have not come. And I don't think that's his problem, to be honest with you. I think on paper, this team should win a lot of games. They should have won the series in Columbus. They should have won the series in Montreal. They should have won freaking the series against the Tampa Bay Lightning this past year. They were a goal away from doing that in overtime in Game 6. So I like the vision. I think he should keep going towards it. But at some point, whether if it's coaching or if it's the players just not executing properly, the results has to start coming. But I do like what he wants to do on paper. Like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force him to drink. That's how I feel about this Maple Leafs team and how Kyle Dubas, envisions this team, the way that it's built, the way that it's supposed to execute their game plan, the whole analytics and, blending that with some skills, size, speed. I like everything that they're doing here. I like the potion, but again, needs to start yielding some results or let's face it, don't believe Dubas has much time left, especially if it's another first-round exit, which is an unfortunate because it's not necessarily his fault. He hasn't done a bad job, in my opinion, but it's a lot easier to fire one general manager than it is to completely disown the entire roster. So I could see that being the case. But yeah, that was good. That was fun. Overall, I think they got B- by both the fan base and the the public. And yeah, like we said, ranked 18th, apparently, in terms of front office confidence rankings. So I think that they should be a little bit higher, probably should be top 10 realistically, in my opinion. Should be a top 10 for when you look at how confident you should be in the way that your front office works. But is what it is. Everyone's got their own opinions. Some are higher, some are lower. Is what it is. All right, Dave, fun stuff, buddy. That'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all podcast platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti. Go ahead, smash that like button if you're watching here on YouTube and leave a comment down below your thoughts on how Kyle Dubas is steering the ship and your confidence level in management and in the front office for the Maple Leafs. Let us know in the comment section down below or reach out to us on Twitter and let us know as well. All right, that does it for us today. We'll be back with another episode on Monday. Enjoy the weekend, folks. Go Canada, go. Or Gold Canada Gold. They play today. They're taking on Czechia, who did upset the Americans. We were recording yesterday prior to the game saying, barring an upset, it'll be Canada versus, who are they going to play? Sweden?
I believe it would have been Sweden, yeah.
Yeah. And then the upset came. So they now play Czechia instead. That game today at 4 p.m. So you can watch that on TSN. We will, and then the gold medal game will be on Saturday or Sunday. I think it might be Sunday.
I think it's usually Sunday. So.
Yeah, so it'll probably be on Sunday, which means we'll break it all down for you on Monday. So we'll be back with another episode then. But until then, keep it locked right here on the Locked On Leafs podcast.